They say every marriage is a mystery. You never really know who you're walking down the aisle with.
When I married Mike, I felt like I got a good deal on a used car.
Susan thought she found the man of her dreams. But over the years, that man becomes every woman's nightmare.
Mike was very suspicious, and it was never really clear where that anger was coming from.
For nearly 20 years, Susan went to bed with the time bomb.
Mike valued money and things over human life.
So Susan wound up fighting for her life.
She was on her knees when he's striking her from above.
I could see in his eyes that he was here to kill me.
My name is Steve Schirripa. I grew up in a pretty rough neighborhood in Brooklyn, New York. I've seen good people turn bad and bad people turn worse. Some took contracts to carry out a hit. Some were victims of a hit. To hitmen, life and death is just part of the business. It's nothing personal.
September 6, 2006, Portland, Oregon. Susan Kuhnhausen is finishing a grueling shift in the ER. After 20 years, Susan is an expert nurse. It's her life that could use patching up. Her 17-year marriage has collapsed, and she's learning how to be single again. Learning how to live without her husband, Michael Kuhnhausen. But Michael has a different plan. He's hired a hitman to do away with his wife.
If I were dead, he wouldn't have to share anything. If I were dead, he would not have failed at a second marriage.
After Susan's untimely death, he figures on mourning all the way to the bank.
Call me old-fashioned, but I think murder is kind of a weird way to break up with somebody. Seriously, when you get up there and say, till death do us part, the last thing on most people's mind is arranging your spouse's demise. That's how Susan and Michael Kuhnhausen started out. They were married for 17 years, and for most of the time, they were a happy couple. What Susan didn't know was that Michael was damaged, and even worse, that he refused every chance to heal. So every night of her married life, Susan snuggled up to a time bomb.
So how did years of family life end up with a corpse in the Kuhnhausen's hall? To understand her husband's plot and how it came off the rails, the first thing to know is that Susan Kuhnhausen is tougher than she looks. To understand it all, we have to go back to 1988. Susan is working as an emergency room nurse. Her life is devoted to being a bright spot in the lives of people who are having a very bad day. But you don't last a week in the ER if there's no grit behind your smile.
One of the nice things about emergency nursing is there is a great deal of variety. You have to be able to make critical decisions in a very short space of time, and you have to trust that you're doing the right thing.
Susan is a veteran nurse. She seems to have a special way with all types, you know, the super sick, the super needy. She just has a really soft, good heart to take care of those types of patients.
I really feel that that's one of the biggest advantages, is that people are very appreciative of what we do for them.
All that caring can leave you longing for love when your shift is over. So at 33, Susan decides it's high time she starts looking for a little TLC of her own.
I had been focusing on work for a long time. I worked primarily night shifts. Mostly I was looking to go out and spend more time with guys again. I had gotten into a period in my life where I mostly hung out with my women friends, and that gets boring.
Susan wants to have it all, a great career and a loving partner. Like a lot of people looking for love, she takes out an ad in the local paper. Susan's looking to cast a wide net. But the trouble with trawling is you never know what you're gonna drag up. The man of your dreams or the deadliest catch.
It said single white female, 33, overweight but not over life. If you're interested in a bright, funny woman who wants to explore the Northwest, then give me a call or answer my ad, something to that effect. I was nervous. I had not ever done anything at all like that.
The best man in Susan's net is Michael Kuhnhausen. He's no Hollywood heartthrob, but he is kind and attentive. In their love story, Michael is a diamond in the rough.
I don't want to say he looked like a biker, but just very kind of gruff looking. But after you get to know him and he gets to know you, then you get to see a different side.
My first impression of Mike was that he seemed like a pretty nice guy. He was a little ragged, kind of biker-looking kind of guy. You know how people, when they're dating, they're always on their best behavior anyway, you know, and they're always nice to the family and that kind of stuff.
It's not like Michael has no baggage, but Susan's professional specialty is patching up damaged people. Her whole life is devoted to turning dents and bruises into smiles and a good story. He's divorced, so what? A couple of kids? Hey, more people to love.
Mike was very soft-spoken. He was polite. He would laugh easily. I felt like I got a good deal on a used car. We talked for probably 150 hours over the course of a couple of weeks. We talked about what we wanted from life.
What it seems they want is each other. So in December 1988, just months after meeting, Susan and Michael get hitched. Susan's eyes are open. She believes she's getting a decent, honest man.
I felt that anybody who gets married is very brave, and anybody who is willing to get married a second time is doubly brave.
At first, things couldn't be better. The Kuhnhausens are poster children for love and second chances.
Things were good in their relationship. In spring and summer, we would look for butterflies. We were birders in the fall. We had taken a trip and had seen quite a bit of the Oregon coast and had a fairly good time.
After a few years of marriage, most couples settle into a routine. But Susan, she notices the man she married is changing.
I felt that he was guarded and that he had been hurt before, and he was concerned about being vulnerable and possibly being hurt again.
Something is clearly eating at Michael, and it's not good. He's becoming incredibly negative. He retreats from human contact, even with his wife.
So Susan sets out to do what she does best, help a wounded soul heal. She encourages her husband to get therapy, but Michael's not into talking about his problems. And anyway, he doesn't have a problem. The world does.
Michael's version of therapy is working on his sports collection. He's got thousands of baseball cards, signed photos, and jerseys, all stashed in the basement.
If he had money, he bought baseball cards that he might pay $15 for today. It's worth 15 cents tomorrow or 15,000 tomorrow, you know. To him, he thought that was money. But he just kind of kept all that hidden away.
In Mike's mind, his sports memorabilia collection was worth more than it actually was if you were trying to sell it.
So what's going on with Michael? He's spending more and more time alone. He avoids people, but he obsesses over stuff. For instance, he really believes his sports collection is worth tens of thousands of dollars. Money's a big thing for Mike. He's terrified someone might take away things he owns. His collection, his house, it's all his. Even if Susan is paying most of the bills.
One thing about Mike is he always worked. But I don't believe Mike ever felt financially secure in our relationship because I brought more money into the home. He always scrutinized the accounts, so he would get anxious over small purchases that we could easily afford.
You'd think scoring a new job might brighten Michael's outlook. He lands one with a lot of responsibility. Problem is, it puts him in contact with a crowd not noted for their decency.
He was the head of maintenance for a chain of adult entertainment stores here in Portland. He went to more than one store, so he was kind of like an overseer.
Mike oversaw the hiring, firing, training of janitorial folks for the company, and that was never an issue for me. They paid good wages, they paid benefits, and he did a good job. As near as I know, it's my understanding that he was good at what he did. I don't know for certain.
Michael might have started out as a caring and decent husband. But the doors of a pawn shop are often portals into a whole nother world. The more time Michael spends with people coming and going to and from that world, the more his own colors get darker and darker.
Portland, Oregon, September 6, 2006. Susan Kuhnhausen is heading home after a long shift in the ER. She's planning a quiet night. Unfortunately for Susan, her estranged husband, Michael, is busy stage managing a surprise. He's stashing a hitman named Ed Haffey into her house. Haffey will be ready and waiting for her arrival.
A wise man once said, all marriages are happy. It's living together afterwards that causes the trouble. After 17 years of marriage, maybe Susan Kuhnhausen should have known there was something deeply wrong. Thinking the best of people isn't a crime, but it can be dangerous.
Even though the first decade of their marriage was smooth sailing, over time, storm clouds have been gathering. Michael's brooding gets worse. His outbursts turn violent. He's no longer the happy, caring man Susan married.
Mike was very fearful, very suspicious. He just was chronically angry. And it was never really clear where that anger was coming from.
I would probably say his negativity is the most marked thing that I could see had a big effect on Sue. If she and I decided to go to a movie, he would be grumbling about the fact that she spent money on the movie.
Probably about 7 years into the marriage, it became clear to me that he was not going to be able to control his periodic outbursts of anger, that he was anxious on a chronic, everyday basis, and there was not anything that I could do about that for him.
It's not that Susan hasn't been trying, but she's had to live through years of nasty spats. She's resigned to holding her tongue for fear of setting off his hair trigger.
Now, I know what you're thinking. Every story has at least two sides. Susan's got lots of friends, but no one has much to say about Michael. The problem is, Michael is fixated on things he owns and things he can control. Greedy, obsessive people, they're not such great company. Mike doesn't have many friends, but he sure has a lot of baseball cards.
By now, Susan's figured out one of the reasons Michael is disturbed. He's seen disturbing things. He's one of the 1.5 million Americans who fought the war in Vietnam. He says he went on long-range patrols. That's an assignment guaranteed to expose you to the worst war has to offer.
He never really talked about Vietnam. I've been around a lot of veterans. They either talk about it or they don't talk about it. He seemed to me one of those that didn't talk about it.
I know he probably saw some really horrible things, and I would imagine he couldn't come back from something like that unchanged.
Only one time did he really speak much about his experience. He said that they had been instructed to go into a village to kill some VC, but instead that there were children involved in the village. When I suggested that he might benefit from going to the vet center or connecting with the VA, he said no. He described it as putting all of that in a room and locking the doors.
Susan knows those doors can't stay locked. Hey, you can't really help someone that won't help themselves.
In my neighborhood, there were a lot of guys just a few years older than me who got sent to Vietnam. There was something different about them when they came back. I'm no psychologist, but I do know that post-traumatic stress is a powerful thing. It's a deep, dark well that takes a lot of help to escape. For a guy like him, Susan could have been a life raft. I mean, she's caring, strong, and has good insurance to boot. But he's in a whole other place. I mean, he's beginning to think she's the enemy.
Look, we've all got our baggage, but what he's got is radioactive. Over time, it mutates him from being a good and loving husband into a killer.
He always felt like that he didn't get a fair shake or a break in life, and that when things were not going well, that it was everyone else around him who had caused that to be for him. I think that he felt like he was losing again, that I was going to take advantage of him financially, the way he felt his first wife had.
The problem is way deeper than Mike feeling mistreated. Michael and Susan are supposed to be a team, but now he's hoarding more than just his precious card collection.
He was getting a bonus, I thought, at the end of every year for about $1,000. But I found out that, in fact, he had been getting $4,000 or $5,000 a year, but only telling me about $1,000. So my husband was hiding thousands of dollars from me every year.
Listen, I've known guys like Michael. We all have. He really believes he's always the victim. It's a way to blame the world for your own failures, and it excuses your bad behavior when you lash out at people close to you.
Mike's salting away quite a nest egg. It's the kind of cash that'll come in handy if your bad attitude turns violent. Eventually, Susan's had enough. To protect her own sanity, she tells Mike to get out.
I wanted him to go. I felt like I was doing the work of the marriage. I felt that I did the work of trying to make a relationship for us that would work, and he was not being a part of that. I wanted to be alone and have quiet and peace in my own home.
Michael finds himself discarded. Man, he can't deal with that. All of his pent-up rage, frustration, and feelings of persecution now have one focus. Susan, the woman who wants to take everything he has. She's the possession he can't control.
It's been 10 months since Susan kicked Michael out. She hoped it might be the jolt he needed to force a hard look in the mirror. But not Mike. He was bitter and angry before. But now, it's only gotten worse.
As bad as this all seems, you gotta remember, Susan didn't decide to spend her life with a monster. She married a nice guy who had problems he wouldn't deal with, and so they got worse and worse.
And the crowd Michael's been hanging out with, well, they greased the skids of his decline. One of his janitors at the adult video store is a guy named Ed Haffey. Ed and Mike have become buds.
Ed Haffey had been involved in a variety of different crimes stemming back almost 20 years. And when he got out of jail, he'd move between friends and friends just to get drugs. And when he owed people money, he'd move on.
Ed Haffey's biggest issue is badness. He is a bad, bad guy. Where do I start?
Drugs, violence, robbery. How about this? When his ex-girlfriend told the cops what he'd been up to, Haffey paid a guy to torture, kill her, and dump her body in the river. Like I said, a bad guy.
After his last stint behind bars, 10 years for having that girlfriend killed, Haffey adds to his problems by picking up a costly crack habit. So now, he's not only brutal and dangerous, he's also broke and desperate to keep his pipe full. Not many would consider Ed Haffey as friend material. Just out of prison for a violent crime, the guy is a piece of work. But Ed and Mike do have things in common.
Ed Haffey totally buys into the whole world is against me notion. In my experience, most lowlifes are dead certain their predicaments are the fault of just about anyone but themselves. If you ever needed proof that misery loves company, Exhibit A would be Mike and Ed.
Ed Haffey and Mike Kuhnhausen had a lot of similarities. You know, they were both in the military. They knew each other because they worked together. So there was a lot of common ties between the two.
Whether it's Haffey's influence or his own pathology, Michael gets nastier by the day.
I went to the parking garage after work one evening, and 2 tires on the passenger side of my Honda were flattened. And I thought, how weird, how could I have blown both tires? But when I limped over to the nearest gas station, the gentleman there said the air was let out of your tires. I never suspected that it was Mike, but retrospectively, maybe it was.
I know what you're thinking. What's a little vandalism between estranged spouses? The point is, Mike's made a turn. He's gone from being an angry, bitter, reclusive miser to something else. A guy who can actually cause harm. It's a bad turn. Susan notices. It scares her.
And I remember one time, Mike pressing Sue to go to the beach. But my first thought was, you're not going alone with him, are you?
Had he already been making plans for me to fall off of a cliff? You know, I don't know. I don't know.
So around this time, Susan detects a hit on her finances. She and Michael still have a joint account. Suddenly, he's withdrawing lots and lots of cash.
Now, Susan's been a hard worker all her life. I mean, she's no millionaire, but she's comfortable. The house is paid off, and so are the cars. She's got some savings, life insurance, and a nice pension fund.
He had begun taking money out of our accounts, but I had no clue. I changed my life insurance to my brother and my mother's name.
I think it was just, to keep some safety there, for herself, because she didn't really know. I don't think that she wanted to believe that anything could happen, but he had made several off-color remarks or made those staring looks at her.
Susan's a nurse, a healer. But the first thing ER professionals learn about is triage. You don't waste your time on the ones you can't help. It's clear to Susan that her marriage is dead. She tells Michael there's no point in resuscitation. She wants a divorce.
He told me early in our marriage he didn't want to be divorced again. When I told him that I was going to file for divorce, he said, "Wait, I need more time to get my head together." Now I know he needed more time to get the head together.
For Michael, he thinks his life can't get any worse. But like they say in Portland, into every life, lots of rain must fall.
He had lost his job, the job he had had for many years. Well, he seemed emotional.
We think that everything was kind of falling out from underneath him. And the only way to get back was to get some money so he can stand up on his own.
With no house, no job, and a wife who's had enough of his refusing to help himself, Michael Kuhnhausen is now forced to confront who's really responsible for everything going against him. You got it, Susan. But Mike's figured a way out. If Susan were out of the picture, he'd keep all his stuff and get a pile of money too.
Trouble is, deep down, Mike's a coward. He's not gonna kill Susan himself. He's gonna hire his friend. And he might be spineless, but he's not brainless. Mike knows he'll need an airtight alibi.
I think when Michael Kuhnhausen decided to solicit somebody for this, Ed Haffey had the background he was looking for. And when the opportunity came up, he'd been there before. He'd seen this before. This is something that wasn't new to him. It was just a matter of doing it.
Susan has no idea that the man she loved and tried to save has decided to repay her by arranging for her murder. Married for 17 years, Michael and Susan Kuhnhausen have reached an impasse in their relationship.
They each have a plan to solve their marital woes. Susan's pushing Michael to divorce court. He's thinking more of hammering her into an early grave. Marriage. Everybody has an idea how to make things better.
In the summer of 2006, Susan's idea of splitting up is paying off for her. Her friends notice that she seems happier and more relaxed.
Sue did a lot better once Mike was out of the house. The removal of all that negativity just made a huge difference in her life. And I would describe Mike as just an unhappy, miserable person.
Luckily, Michael's misery buddy is right there with him. Ed Haffey also got the pawn shop pink slip. Angry, broke, and desperate as Michael is, it's nothing compared to Haffey's discomfort. Crackhead, remember? You need cash to feed those cravings.
Ed Haffey needed to survive. He needed money to survive. He needed ways to survive. He incurred debts amongst the people that he lived, owing them rent, owing them money for drugs, and it just continued to build and build and build. Michael Kuhnhausen approached Ed Haffey. They had discussed $50,000, so $25,000 up front. Ed Haffey believed that he could pay a lot of his debts right from the very beginning, get those out of the way, and then the $25,000 at the end would take care of Ed Haffey.
Let's do this, man.
Haffey's desperation is just what Mike needs. He figures if he can establish a good alibi, the cops will never connect him to her murder. He'll get the house, the pension money, and his sports collection. And 50 grand will go a long way to solving Haffey's problems, too.
Some of Haffey's friends actually said that he started to pay off some of his debts before this thing happened. $400 here, $500 here. His friends told us that Ed Haffey says, I've got a job to do, somebody wants somebody killed.
But as they think through their plan, Mike and Ed have one worry: Susan's brother, James. He and Susan are real close, and he's sure to put two and two together.
Mike and Haffey were watching me. I think he was trying to set me up, you know, to get me out of the picture. I don't know what his plan was, but I had been stalked by Haffey, I believe.
Collecting Susan's loot will be way more complicated with a suspicious brother around, so James could be in danger too.
Michael Kuhnhausen was once the man of Susan's dreams. He liked walks on the beach, candlelight dinners. He found a good woman and kept her happy for a long time. But that time is behind him. He took a bad turn and he kept going. What matters to him now is control. Control of his things, his money, his house. Killing Susan gets him all of that. His transformation from loving husband to homicidal monster is complete.
He did not want to split anything. I think he wanted everything. He wanted the house, his retirement. I think he just wanted everything for himself.
September 6th, 2006. The trap is set. Mike tells Haffey it's time to put the hammer down.
Ed Haffey believed if there was any kind of resistance, Ed Haffey could take Susan Kuhnhausen. We think that Michael took Haffey there, drove him there.
Susan never changed her alarm codes after she kicked Mike out, so it's easy for him to get in.
We shared an alarm code, the date of our anniversary, 12/10. There's a bypass alarm, so that when you're in, if you have pets and stuff, people can move about the house freely, but the house is still armed if someone tries to break in.
Ed Haffey has agreed to kill Susan for $50,000, and it's not gonna be pretty. To keep things quick and quiet, he plans to beat her brains out with a claw hammer. No gunshots, no screaming stab victim. The weapon's unusual, unless, of course, you're totally confident that you're way more powerful than your victim.
All Mike's planning comes down to this. To the cops, it'll look like a burglary gone wrong. And he was well out of town when it happened.
I went to work. It was a regular shift for me. It was a fairly busy day.
Around 3 in the afternoon, Susan gets a strange call. It's Michael. He's just touching base.
And I said, what's going on? And he said, well, I've got to get away. I told him to relax, to have a good time, try and get some rest.
By the time Susan leaves work, Michael is checked into the motel at the beach. His alibi is all set up. As the sun sets, he waits for Ed Haffey's call to tell him that his wife is dead.
So I came home and turned off the alarm. And I had found a note from Micah in the mud porch, so I placed it here with my other things. And then I just headed out towards the front to get the mail. And after getting the mail, I returned in and kicked off my Birkenstocks and rounded the corner towards my room to get out of my working clothes. And when I got here, I noticed that the door was almost closed instead of open, and the room was very dark. When I pushed the door back and stepped forward, my attacker began to hit me in the head and face with the hammer. I pushed into him. I said, "Who are you? What do you want? Get out of here." And he continued to hit me with the hammer. When I saw the look in his eye, I knew that this was something that was not foreign to him.
Alone in her house with a desperate killer, Susan Kuhnhausen is fighting for her life. The Oregon coast is a great place to get away from it all. So on September 6, 2006, Michael Kuhnhausen comes here to establish that he was nowhere near Portland when his wife was murdered.
But Susan is not dead. Well, not yet anyway. And hitman Ed Haffey's confidence that a hammer would make killing her quick and quiet is proving to be a bit of a miscalculation.
When I saw in his eyes that he was here to kill me, I became enraged. Of course, when it all happens, you don't really have time to formulate a plan. What I did during the attack was, in me as a result of my nurse's training, I fought, and I knew that for whatever reason, he wanted to kill me. And I knew that I wanted to live. At one point, I got the hammer. My dad was a carpenter, and for self-defense, we had hammers. And he said, use the claw end, it works the best. And we were literally nose to nose, struggling over a hammer. And he said, you're strong. But he was not afraid. He was surprised.
He's able to take the hammer back and push her down to the ground. So I believe she was on her knees when he's striking her from above. She said she reached behind him, grabbed his wallet, and tried to pull that wallet out of his pocket to toss it. She said if she wasn't going to make it, she wanted somebody to know who was here.
So I began to bite him. I bit him on his arm, I bit him on his flank, I bit him on his thigh, and at one point when he was slightly turned, I bit him in his genitalia. My voice was gone. I became the weapon. I pushed him flat to the floor, and I got up on his backside, and I leaned forward, and I put my left arm under his neck, and I squeezed, and I said, tell me who sent you here, and I will call you an ambulance. I wanted him to be afraid, as terrified as I was, but he instead tried to flip me up off of his back. And that's when I leaned forward until he stopped moving. I wasn't sure whether he was unconscious or dead. But when he was still, I ground the hammer and I ran.
Sorry, guys.
Susan Kuhnhausen didn't play the role of a victim. Susan Kuhnhausen played the role of a survivor.
Susan's badly beaten, but incredibly, she has survived. Ed Haffey, he didn't. "You're strong," were his last words. Paramedics rush her to the hospital. She winds up a patient in her own ER.
I saw the ambulance, paramedics. I recognized both the paramedics because they had come in before. And the female paramedic looked at me and said, "She beat his ass." I will never forget those words. Susan was very visibly upset, crying, talking about over and over that she killed him. And just to see her suffering and how devastated she was.
They sent an officer to come and be with me. When I saw his face, the first thing I asked is he dead? And he said, yes, he is.
We knew from the very beginning that this was, if you will, a justifiable homicide, that somebody had just broke into her house, and she's the one that caused the death of this person.
The cops discovered the note left by Mike. It is a key part in establishing his alibi. Out on the coast, long after sunset, with no word from Haffey, Michael figures something's gone wrong.
When I got home, my phone was ringing, and mind you, this is 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and I picked up the phone and it was Mike. And the hair just stood up on the back of my neck. He just started talking, but the first thing out of his mouth was, "What's going on? I've been at the beach for 3 days." It was just really odd. And it seemed kind of manic. He was just kind of saying, "I saw my house on the news. What's going on? Where's Sue? Nobody will tell me anything. I've called the hospital." And of course, I know that he's tried to call the hospital. I was just there, and they were purposefully not letting him know if she was there because, again, we just didn't really know what was going on. I think he was trying to put, his alibi out there.
The cops have no idea what happened or the history that makes Susan and her friends suspicious, but they get up to speed real fast.
They discover a backpack in the basement, and it breaks the case.
We went in the house after the detectives released it. The first thing I saw was actually the items that had been lined up to go out the door by whoever had been in there. But when I looked at what those things were, they were the sports cards and Mike's football jersey that was framed. All these things were only things that Mike coveted. Nobody else. And I knew right then that he was involved. I was standing there looking at the sports memorabilia, and right in front of me was the backpack. I mean, I knew that backpack did not belong there.
That backpack was Ed Haffey's. And in that backpack was some crucial evidence that we were able to tie to Ed Haffey and to Michael Kuhnhausen. We found a piece of paper in there that said, "Call Mike, need a letter." We immediately started putting 2 and 2 together with Ed Haffey and Mike Kuhnhausen.
So the cops are pretty sure Michael put Haffey up to it. Trouble is, the cops don't know where he is, or even God forbid, if he's coming back to finish the job.
We learned shortly after that he purchased a gun before this incident. So we had to put in some kind of safety measures for Susan Kuhnhausen because she was still alive and a person of interest is still out there, possibly with a gun.
Eight days after Susan's attack, Michael is arrested without hurting himself or anyone else.
He tries to play the victim, says he's suicidal and that he wasn't involved, but no one buys it. The fact that his phone number was in Haffey's bag is enough to charge him with attempted murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Just before the trial, Michael folds, he pleads guilty.
I've hurt a lot of people in the last year, and I'm sorry. That's all I can say.
He'd been with Susan for many years, and he knew a lot about her. But I think the things that really mattered in this situation was that he didn't know that she was a fighter.
I think Michael only regrets that he's in jail and, you know, that he's not free to, you know, live his life the way he wants. I think that is his only regret.
So in the end, Michael is sentenced to 10 years. Susan, the healer, has to live with the fact that she killed a man. She had to divorce Michael. He fought for every penny, but in the end, she got to keep the house and her pension. Oh, and his precious collection. Mike hung on to that. Susan doesn't miss that stuff, but she does live in fear of the day that Michael gets out.
Money. His motivation was money. He wanted all the insurance, he wanted all the money, he wanted all the sports card. It was all about Mike. Mike wanted it all. But Mike couldn't get it all because Mike could not open up to accept anybody's care or love or anything like that.
I am absolutely concerned about his parole. I believe that as soon as he is free, I run the risk of murder or murder-suicide. I know with certainty that it's a terrible thing to take another person's life. I don't know that you ever get over having killed another human being. I've always said I don't take any pride in what I did, but I also feel no shame.
It's a girl's dream to marry a rock star. But not every rock star is marriage material.
Oh yeah, none of us liked him.
Carole let him domineer. She doesn't normally do that.
Todd Garton uses lies to invent new identities and manipulate others.
It's just a pathological liar. From what I know of him, he'd be the greatest car salesman ever.
When the pressures of family life
Todd,
get to be too much,
we're gonna have a baby.
Todd turns to an old lover.
I think the two of them together are really bad news. It's a dark side of his personality.
He creates a new story, a masterpiece of deception to rid himself of his obligations and his family.
He finally brainwashed me, and that's when I just let go and said, Todd, I'll just kill anybody you want.
What are you doing?
My name is Steve Schirripa. I grew up in a pretty rough neighborhood in Brooklyn, New York. I've seen good people turn bad and bad people turn worse. Some took contracts to carry out a hit. Some were victims of a hit. To hitmen, life and death is just part of the business. It's nothing personal.
May 16, 1998, Cottonwood, California. Norman Daniels is a reluctant hitman heading out on a job. He has it on good authority that his target, Carole Garton, is a highly trained assassin. Her life as an ordinary office worker is just a cover. Trouble is, it's all a lie, invented by Carole's husband, Todd.
It's not my wife. It's the target. What you're gonna do, what you're getting paid to do.
The story of Carole Garton's death is a weird one, so let's start with some things we know for sure. Carole Garton is not a trained assassin, but hitman Norman Daniels believes she is. Carole's husband, Todd, concocted an amazing story, one so fantastic, he's able to convince his friend to kill Carole. You know, you don't meet them often in real life, but Todd Garton is an evil genius.
Todd and Carole's story starts in Portland, Oregon, 10 years earlier in the late 1980s. Young Todd Garton is living his dream. He's a rock star. He's the leader of a band, Détente Touch.
Todd Garton really was exciting to be around, and he was just full of energy and no good. All that he talked about was, I want to be in a band, I want to be famous, and I know how to get there.
It's the end of the Reagan years, and the Pacific Northwest is the breeding ground for a raw new sound that's just right for the times. Bored, yet angry. It's called grunge. Now, Garton isn't really a rebel. I mean, he sure doesn't reject mainstream success. He wants to be a megastar.
Todd was definitely running things. Definitely running things. It was his band. Now, I was the lead singer, but I was his creation. I was Carole Bachelor when I met him. He created Ursula D. He named me. He gave me the persona. He taught me what he wanted me to do. I don't know how he knew this, but he had just formed a plan, and we went ahead and went with it. We trusted him, and it worked.
Todd had a vision for what it was that he wanted to say, and that was really the most important part. It didn't matter if it was good. It mattered that he believed what it is that he was selling.
A lot of his songs had kind of political overtones to them, especially about the cause in Ireland and the troubles there.
Todd's passion and his larger-than-life personality helped make Détente Touch a big deal. In Portland, anyhow.
Now, me? Well, back then, I'm in Vegas working at the Riviera Hotel. And there's not a lot of calls for grunge acts on the strip, so Détente Touch never comes our way. But I can tell you about rock stars. Sure, they get worshipped on stage, but the real action's backstage.
And Todd Garton lives for the attention. But when Todd meets Carole Holman, there's something special about her. She's different from the other girls.
She was so sweet. Just the sweetest person I've ever known. She was so gentle, soft-spoken. You just wanted to hug her all the time.
We were wreaking mayhem, but she was the one that kind of kept the lid on it and kept us from diving off balconies. She was the, stabilizing force.
So Todd and Carole hit it off. His friends think Carole's great. Her family isn't so happy. They think Todd's a bully.
Oh, yeah, none of us liked him. He was one of those dropouts from high school, was gonna play in a band and all that kind of stuff. Pretty scruffy looking and, no job.
Carole acted completely different around Todd than she did around other people. I mean, she let him domineer. She doesn't normally do that.
Despite her family's disapproval,
no one is more put out by the Carole-Todd romance than Todd's girlfriend. Oh yeah, there is that little complication.
The girlfriend's name is Lynn Austin, and her love for Todd knows no boundaries.
Lynn was this groupie that hung out. She was, part of Todd's clothing at that point. You couldn't shake her off. My opinion of her at the time was she was a complete vacuous little slut.
So Todd's got two women in his life, and they couldn't be more different. Carole's your all-American, feet-on-the-ground sweetheart. While Lynn, well, she appeals to Todd's wilder side. The power he has over her is its own kind of erotic thrill.
She fell in love to such a degree with Todd that she took a razor blade, scratched a heart on her thigh, and put a T in the middle of it for Todd.
Anything Todd wanted her to do, she would do. Absolutely anything. She would never say no to Todd. Lynn was the negative alter ego, the dark side of his personality that he played off of.
Todd isn't just dark, he's dangerous. He's obsessed with the troubles on Ireland, which lead him to a weird fantasy life.
Todd's persona was that he ended up in Northern Ireland teaching how to clean and fire hunting rifles. It's just in Northern Ireland, it's called a sniper rifle. I didn't care if there was any truth to it or not. And over a period of, 10 years working with him, the story stayed consistent.
And Lynn, well, she believes all of Todd's fantastic stories about being an assassin for the IRA. He even gives her pictures as proof.
Lynn took it hook, line, and sinker, the things that Todd was telling her about his days as a teenager in the IRA.
Having an obsessed groupie is great, but Todd realizes that Carole's the keeper. She doesn't fall for Todd's absurd James Bond fantasies, but she does fall for him.
It doesn't happen right away, and some hearts get bruised, but in the end, Lynn is pushed aside. Carole moves in with Todd.
There was several occasions where Lynn showed up and Carole put her foot down and said, "This is not going to happen." And so she would disappear for periods of time, and then she'd show back up, and Carole would have to get the broom and chase the rat out.
Daytime touch doesn't last.
Carole doesn't mind that his Rockstar days are done.
Carole was the rock that actually gave him a foundation to build something good off of. I think Carole was the strong side, was the rational side.
Todd takes the end of his glory days very hard. I mean, you don't just put your ego in a scrapbook. Todd Garton needs to reinvent himself.
The problem for Carole is that Todd's transformation will make him much more dangerous. May 16, 1998. Cottonwood in Northern California is a small, close-knit town. But today, a hitman is driving its streets. Norman Daniels is on his way to his very first assignment. Carole Holman, now Garton, is 8 months pregnant. She's clueless to the horror headed her way. A horror set in motion by her husband, Todd.
California is a really good place to reinvent yourself. So after his rock star career craters, you think Todd would try again. I mean, showbiz success is all about determination.
Todd's got determination in spades, but over the last 10 years, it hasn't helped him one bit. When his music career dies, he pulls a 180 and enlists in the Marines. Soon after, he and Carole get married. But Todd gets hurt in basic training, and his military career ends before it begins.
He couldn't finish basic training, And I know that was a huge blow to him, just completely devastated him.
Next, Todd embarks on a series of schemes. He starts a concert promotion company. He opens a club. He even tries running a camp for troubled teens. All of them fail.
One of the things Todd feared most was happening. He had kind of one low-paying job after another. For somebody with so much imagination as Todd, life in Cottonwood would have been very boring.
So by the late 90s, Todd is scraping by as a fence builder. His life isn't what most people would consider hell. He and Carole aren't really prosperous, but she's the breadwinner. It's her steady income supporting them both. Carole even tolerates her husband's hobby of telling his pals he earned the medals she knows he bought.
What do you think?
He likes to talk, he likes to tell stories. He liked to build himself up to something and act like he was big shot or smart or knew something.
Todd's still telling people he was an IRA killer. And now he's adding a new lie about being a crack Marine sniper.
I don't think you can tell a sociopath, you know. If maybe we'd been around them more, you know, and saw how they interacted with each other, we might have noticed something, but we weren't there.
Todd's great at hiding his fantasy life from Carole, too.
You heard the stories? Now you see the proof.
He's a con man who knows you only float lies past people who will believe them. Luckily for him, he's found a couple of simple-minded marks: Norman Daniels and Dale Gordon. Unlike Todd, Dale Gordon really served in the Marines. Now he runs a machine shop in town.
Todd showed me medals about him in the Marine Corps. I don't know where he got it all. I don't know. I mean, he had like Purple Hearts and all this stuff. He always talked about how he was a Marine sniper and this and that. And I was a little bit gullible back then, and I always thought to myself, Marine's not going to do this to another Marine. And he sure did. He sure messed me over real bad.
There's a gun show almost every month up here, and you can go to these shows and pick up pretty much any Army emblem, knife, gun, badge, whatever you want. And it's very simple to put together, you know, that sort of a persona, that everything you need is out there, easy to get. You just have to have the creative enough mind to put the whole thing together.
As for Norm Daniels, well, he's a single father.
Now you know what I do.
He pumps gas, trying to make ends meet for him and his son. Todd's stories of action and adventure have Norm hooked.
It is.
Norman worked for a living. He tried to take care of his kids. He tried to do what was right. I think he just got conned and manipulated just like I did.
Norm and Dale are straightforward, small-town guys. Todd says he's a sniper, that he takes on secret missions to rub out America's enemies. I mean, nobody would make that stuff up. Why would they? In Todd's hands, these two chumps are lambs to the slaughter.
What he told me was that he went down to Nicaragua and was assassinating people for a living, that he killed a lot of people in the Irish Republican Army.
Norman was a little bit naive, but also Todd was very convincing. He knew about sniper rifles. He knew about silencers and scopes and all those things.
To me, he's just a pathological liar. I think he almost believes these stories.
While Todd's keeping busy constructing a new fantasy life for himself, Carole, well, Carole is still living in the real world.
Basically, Carole was the breadwinner in the family. She always had a steady job, was well-liked by her employees and her managers.
Early one September morning in 1997, after 6 years of marriage, Carole's got the news she's been waiting for.
Todd,
She hopes it'll bring them together,
honey,
make them a family.
we're gonna have a baby.
Can Todd rise to the occasion and become a caring husband and father? Who are we kidding? He fails miserably. Remember his old squeeze, Lynn Hassan? Todd sure does. Truth is, Todd and Lynn have kept tabs on each other over the years. She remembers and misses the passions they shared. The best part for Todd? Lynn still believes all those stories. Like his new pals Norm and Dale, she believes he's a rock star, sniper, hitman.
Todd knew he had a fan in Lynn, and they were sending each other letters. She had a lot of his clippings that she put in her notebook.
It's the same love triangle from Todd's Rockstar days. But now Lynn represents something new. She's freedom and desire. An escape from having to grow up and be a father.
I think the two of them together are really bad news. It's a dark side of his personality, and I think that they will always have this connection.
Lynn's still living near Portland. When it looked like Todd was gone for good, she married a guy named Dean Noyes. They now have 2 kids and a rocky relationship.
Our relationship had degraded. There were a lot of other pressures. We were kind of becoming more and more estranged all the time. That was part of the thing that was tearing us apart all through the winter and spring.
Todd tells Lynn everything she wants to hear. He's still working with the IRA, but now does contracts for the U.S. government. And best of all, we should be together. We just have to get rid of these roadblocks to our love. Blah, blah, blah.
I think he was selling that to her, that I'm not happy with Carole, I'm gonna leave her. And she bought into that he was this action figure, you know, bigger than life.
Pretty soon, Todd heads up to Portland to rekindle his connection with Lynn.
At first, they were just kind of dreaming around that, wouldn't it be nice if one of our spouses wasn't there anymore?
Todd is an expert in erasing the lines between fantasies and reality. He tells Lynn that the secret organization he works with could take care of her husband, Dean, and his wife, Carole.
He was starting to cross a line that, from fantasy, that maybe he could really do one of these things. Todd started cooking up a plan with Lynn to assassinate her husband, Dean Noyes. Lynn took out a $125,000 life insurance policy on Dean's life.
We had had a conversation about life insurance. It's more just family planning, which was counter to the way the rest of the relationship was going. And now you just look back and kind of kick yourself for not having seen it.
Killing Dean will be the opening act before Todd turns his sights on Carole. The thing is this, Todd isn't the kind of guy who likes to get his hands dirty. For his scheme to work, he needs a couple of saps as triggermen. And who could be better than his sidekicks, Norm Daniels and Dale Gordon.
Todd really had to work on me hard as far as abuse. You know, you kick a dog enough, you make him mean. And that's what Todd was doing to me.
Now, this is important. Todd has always been a fantastic liar, but now he's taking things further. He's trying to use his tall tales to get 2 people murdered. He wants his powers of persuasion to turn fantasies into into bloody reality.
Spring 1998. In the backyard of his house in Cottonwood, Northern California, Todd Garton is grooming his pals Norman Daniels and Dale Gordon to become international hitmen.
Monthly 762-554.
You know how they say the road to hell is paved with good intentions? They never mention where bad intentions take you. Todd's hatched a scheme to rid his lover Lynn of her husband and himself of his wife. Norman Dale will be his triggerman. They have no idea that the whole setup is a giant con. There, on the highway to hell, it's paved with the worst intentions possible, and Todd Garton is in the driver's seat.
Now, as a sniper, this rifle becomes an extension of your body. It's not like Hollywood.
From what I know of him, he'd be the greatest car salesman ever. He builds that thing. He can make you believe the story.
But remember, Todd's not selling a used Chevy. He's convincing two ordinary people to kill on his command. So he plays on their weaknesses. He builds up shy Norman, and he beats down the more confident Dale.
He just tried to break me down real bad. Todd was very abusive. He was mentally abusive, and he wasn't physically abusive towards me, but it's just a mental nightmare.
Todd started telling these guys that he was already an operative in an organization known as the Company. It was a secret organization of ex-CIA guys, Navy SEAL guys, soldiers of fortune, just really top-notch assassins. They would get a job to do, get paid for it, and then kind of, go undercover.
Working for the Company sounds great, but Todd needs to spin the tallest of tales if he's to convince these guys to kill his wife Carole and Lynn's husband Dean. Here's how he does it. Step 1, convincing Norman Dale that his friend Lynn, a mother of two, is in serious danger.
Todd was telling me Dean Noyes was a wife beater, and he was just this mean guy, terrible person.
Step 2, it's an opportunity for Todd to introduce his ace sidekicks, Norman Dale, to the Company.
Todd was supposedly a member of the Company. He would have to go on these missions to go kill people. In fact, Todd told me several times that he'd get mail with pictures of people, the bodies that he'd killed.
Step 3, the law of a big payday.
We were supposed to get paid a certain amount or a certain percentage of the insurance policy.
Oh, and one last thing. The clock is ticking.
What Todd would say to me is he said, well, we got yet another person that's trying to kill Dean because he's got so many enemies, and if we don't kill him, somebody else is going to kill him before we do. We're not going to get any money off it.
Todd's performance is a winner. The boys are in.
He just finally brainwashed me, and that's when I just let go and said, Todd, I'll just kill anybody you want.
So where is Carole in all this? She's happy to be nesting and making plans for the baby. She's thinking about the future and pretty much ignoring Todd's friends.
Well, Mrs. Todd Garton learned long ago to turn a blind eye to her husband's little projects. Besides, taking pot shots with your buds in the yard? It's not exactly head-turning in this neck of the woods. What are rare in Carole's eyes are the times her husband acts like a grown-up. Like when he says he's heading back to Portland to check on a job. Thing is, the job Todd goes north to do is to hit on his lover Lynn's husband, Dean. The plan is to catch him in a parking garage and kill him on his way to work.
For the most part, for Todd, it was the money angle. But for Lynn, it was something else. She wanted to be with Todd. That was the love of her life.
Norman Dale are being hoodwinked too. They think the Company is real and that Dean Noyes deserves to die.
I was supposed to do all the killing up there. It was entirely put on me. Todd had a vicious streak, but he wanted other people to do his dirty work. He wanted to watch you killed.
There were no clues that these things are going on. I wasn't able to put all the pieces together. I didn't know that anything was off.
At the last moment, Lynn gets cold feet. She'd rather divorce Dean than kill him. So she stops her husband from going to the garage where Todd, Norm, and Dale are waiting. It saves his life.
I don't know how someone could be partaking in those activities and have such a solid facade on a day-to-day basis at home. It must have been an incredible thing that someone can live like that.
Todd was absolutely furious. He was mad because he didn't get the money. He was mad because he didn't get to kill somebody.
The failed hit on Dean is a big setback. And with Carole's due date getting closer and closer, Todd decides the hit on her just can't wait. This time, Norman Daniels gets to play the role of international killer. Figuring the fewer people in on it, the better, Todd doesn't tell Dale Gordon.
Todd and Norma were spending more time together, but it was kind of a situation where I just didn't want to know. If I would known he was going to go after Carole, there's no way. Well, she was my best friend. I mean, he's just an evil son of a gun. I mean, he's just a terrible person.
Todd prepares himself for the performance of a lifetime. Todd starts by showing Norm articles about company hits. He fills in details about Colonel Sean, the company's top secret commander. Then Todd drops his bombshell. His wife, Carole, is really a deadly IRA sniper, too. Don't let her looks fool you. She's lethal. Then Todd tells Norm the company considers him a hot prospect. Now remember this, Norm Daniels is broke. He's never been a real critical thinker, and fear of destitution hasn't made him any smarter.
Todd could pull some strings, and possibly Norman could get into the company, and he'd get him connected with Colonel Sean, and maybe arrange for him to do some work for them and have access to money, income that would help bail him out of a hole.
Now don't forget, this Colonel Sean and the whole story about Carole is made up. But Todd needs to sell it if he's going to get his wife and unborn son taken out.
When Todd told these stories, he made them so exciting, so vivid, so kind of engrossing that Norm wanted to be part of that world.
A few days later, Todd arrives with good news and an envelope sent from the company. Inside is the target of Norm's first solo mission. But there's one big catch, and it's a toughie. It's likely he's going to have to whack someone he knows. The company has to be sure he's got the guts for the hard jobs.
Norman wanted to get in. He was going to have to do exactly what was said in a package he would be receiving. If he didn't, the company would kill Norman. If you open it, you're going to have to follow it no matter what. Norman said, okay.
To Norm Daniels' shock, his buddy Todd is not even surprised. I mean, not even upset that his own wife is the target. So here's how Todd spins it. I was afraid this would happen, but I'm not surprised. It's because Carole has gone rogue. She tried to kill Colonel Sean. And anyway, she's not really my wife. It's not even my kid. And if Sean says she's got to go, well, you really don't have a choice. So Todd's played his biggest lie. He can only hope it's enough to get the job done. April 1998, Cottonwood, California. Norman Daniels is in shock. He can't believe his first solo assignment from the company is to kill his friend and mentor, Todd Garton's pregnant wife.
Carole, that's not my wife. It's the target. what we're gonna do?
Norman liked Carole. He liked her quite a bit. He couldn't believe, you know, that she was going to be assassinated by him.
Todd was telling him, you know, it's my wife, but man, if you don't do this, you're dead.
Understand?
Todd's played his big lie, but it's not working.
Choose you for no reason.
Norm is sick about killing a friend.
My superiors thought you could do it. You thought you could do it. So do it.
Todd's in danger of losing his trigger man. Later that night, as instructed, Norm burns the envelope and pictures, but he does save the wax seal. He wants to have something that proves he was on a mission.
If he ever got caught, I think he wanted to be able to say, I did this at somebody else's direction.
Todd presses on like everything's going according to his plan. He makes sure Norm buys himself a revolver, a .44. Now, revolvers are best because they don't leave casings at the crime scene. But Todd knows his plan is in trouble. His grip on his trained assassin is slipping.
Todd tries a new angle. He calls Lynn and asks her to pretend that she's working for Colonel Sean.
Every waking minute.
He gives her the code name Josephine. Todd pushes Norm to pick a code name too. He'll need it for his interactions with the company.
Very interesting, the code name he picked initially. It was called Hamlet. And he was going back and forth on whether he really wanted to do this or not. It troubled him greatly. Because he liked Carole, and he didn't want to kill her, but he didn't want to be taken out himself. Todd had Lynn contact him and keep him on track. She was supposed to be the person that made sure that he was actually going to go through with it.
Lynn's no con artist, but she does have a talent. And Lonely Norman is open to her kind of persuasion.
Her messages to him began to be more sexual, and from him to her, they were engaging in cyber sex. Incredibly, he's falling for Lynn Noyes, who is Todd's mistress in all of this.
Cyber sex with Josephine is great.
But Norman still wants out of the Carole hit. It's just not in him to kill a friend. I mean, especially one who's 8 months pregnant. So unless he can make Norm afraid, it'll be another Portland, another disaster.
Todd started putting together things on the computer. Orders were being sent to Norman, supposedly from Colonel Sean, who was high up in the company. Actually, these were coming from Todd, who was making them all up.
The messages are blunt. Sean wants Carole dead. There is no wiggle room. Carole dies, or you do. And for good measure, we'll kill your boy.
I think legitimately in his heart, he felt, I'm now into something. Colonel Sean wants me to do this. If I don't do it, something can happen to me or my son.
Norman breaks. What parent wouldn't? He tells Colonel Sean he'll go through with it. He thinks he might die trying, but at least his son will be safe.
He'd always done the best he could by his boy, and this was the tipping point.
May 16, 1998, the day set for the hit. Todd's got a table at a gun show. It'll be his alibi, and his chance to put Norm and Carole together in front of witnesses.
Todd was selling camouflage gear.
That morning, Carole tours the local maternity ward. She knows she's carrying a boy. He's even got a name, Jesse James Garton. and she's in the thick of getting ready for his arrival.
Todd's greatest fear was having that baby, because then he'd have to take care of it. And Todd couldn't handle taking care of anybody. Babies need love. And Todd was not love, he was just hate.
After her appointment, Carole comes to the gun show. Todd's arranged to trade cars with her. Norm's there too. Todd asks Carole to give their friend a lift. He sends her off to her doom and turns back to selling his wares. Ready for his next role, single widower. When Carole and Norman get to the Garton place, Norm's clearly anxious.
He had his pistol with him, a .44, a very, high-powered pistol.
He knows what his mission is, and he knows it has to be now.
So, Norm came to the moment. He had the gun, he and Carole were alone. Look, it doesn't take much force to pull the trigger, but he doesn't do it. It takes more than an hour before the pressure breaks him down. He still has to choose his son or Carole.
Todd Garton has tricked his friend Norman Daniels into agreeing to kill his pregnant wife, Carole.
He wanted to do it right then, but once again, his nerves got to him.
Norman leaves the house, but the pressure forces him back. Norm and Carole sit and talk as friends. But slowly, the desperate need to protect his son breaks Norman.
Kind of in a surreal situation, he pulled the pistol from his waistband. Carole looked at him and couldn't believe it because this was her friend. He shot her once, twice, 5 times in all. He killed Carole and her unborn baby.
Some people think you can't make someone do something that's against their nature, but you can. Happens every day. Norm Daniels doesn't care what happens to him now. He did what he needed to do to protect his kid. He's done thinking.
6:45 p.m. at the Garton place. It's time for a show. Todd loves to act, and he's arranged for an audience.
Somebody call 911!
Good buddy Dale Gordon, who knows nothing about the plot, is there to witness Todd's fake shock.
He knew exactly where to go and walked right into the bedroom, found Carole lying there in her own blood. This is something that's burned in my mind forever. Todd was yelling instructions to me to talk to a 911 operator. And he's all saying, I need oxygen, I need all this stuff.
911, what is your emergency? Okay, we have a pregnant woman, and she's on the floor, bleeding. Maybe somebody shot somebody here. I don't know what's going on.
Paramedics try to revive Carole, but it's too late. She's dead. So's the baby. He also took a bullet.
Carole was one of the nicest people you'd ever meet. It's just a shame, just sickening, and what she had to suffer and go through in her last minutes is just calls your stomach.
I think what Todd really thought was just that the Cottonwood police would come out and there was going to be no investigation, nothing, and he'd get away with this bloody murder, and then nothing was going to happen to him.
But the cops do investigate. They begin by tracing Carole's movements before the murder.
We brought Dale and Todd in an interview, and Norman became a person of interest because the last person we know that was with Carole Garton was Norman Daniels.
The cops discovered the abandoned Jeep, but no Norm.
He had just disappeared. Nobody could get a hold of him. Nobody knew where he was. He had a house on Gas Point Road. Nobody was there.
But Norm eventually comes home. And when the cops find Daniels, they find the gun too.
He tells us that, you know, the gun's in the house, and it was under a pillow on his bed, 44 caliber. I think it was a Rossi. And I was actually there, and myself and Captain Foster, we pulled the pillow back and went, oh my God.
The cops start asking questions, but Norm Daniels doesn't say a word.
Norman, I think in the beginning, was afraid of the company that Todd had portrayed. Honestly, I believe the guy was afraid that if he talked, they could get to him, even if he was in jail or prison.
While the cops are grilling Norm, Todd is orchestrating Carole's funeral.
It was all about Todd. And one of the most incredible things he did was have Lynn come down to the memorial service. Everyone that knew Lynn and Carole knew they were not friends by any means, and they were saying to themselves, what is she doing here?
After the funeral, Todd even brings Lynn to the hotel where Carole's family and friends are staying.
They were pretty happy when they came back to the hotel, changing their bathing suits. They were really happy when they came down to the pool. And pretty much Lynn is attached to Todd like a leech. This is a very shocking thing. You know, this is the husband of the person who's just murdered. You know, just have some respect for the friends and family.
While all this is going on, the detectives are kind of still talking to Norman and trying to get to the bottom of all of this.
It takes a little while, but eventually Daniels caves, and the whole crazy story comes rolling out.
In the beginning, I would say I thought the guy was crazy. Then as things checked out, you know, he told about this hit, and it sounded like it went down.
Remember his premonition? That feeling he should hang on to part of the package that Todd gave him? Well, that wax seal is the link police need to tie Todd Garton to the plot to kill his wife and unborn son.
Turned out it was the diving bubble pen that was in Todd's house that he'd put the red wax on and did that. And when we did a search warrant at the house, we found that pen with red wax on it.
A month after Carole's death, Lynn and Todd are both charged with conspiring to kill her. A week later, Dale Gordon is charged with the attempted murder of Lynn's husband, Dean.
We learned later what Todd Garton was, you know. He wanted, in his early days, to be a rock and roll singer, and he struck out. You know, he wanted to be a big military hero, and he didn't. And this guy had an identity problem, wanted to be something he wasn't.
It's clear it did, and it's clear you're behind it.
That's a big motive.
There's only one explanation for this.
Big motive.
At his trial, Todd plays the victim. Illicit lovers Lynn and Norman set him up. He was just in the way. Todd goes to work spinning one last big lie.
Even though he was on trial for his life, Todd was the star of this thing. At some level, he seemed to enjoy it. Todd read this kind of outrageous statement about everybody else except him had been involved in this, and he was innocent.
This time, no one buys the lies. The jury convicts Todd Garton, and they sentence him to death.
There's no such thing as closure. I don't know what idiots come up with that, but a loss is a loss. You're still gonna miss her your whole life. She's still gone. There's no closure just because the guy's sitting in jail.
We were very angry with Todd, and the young kid actually shot her. We saw that he was just duped by Todd, and he just used him as a pawn. I just didn't care. And, you know, it'll never be the same. We'll always miss her.
Carole Garton's death and that of the child she carried was a masterpiece of manipulation. Her husband, Todd, convinced the guy he had to kill Carole to protect his own child. Ironic when you remember the real target of Todd Garton's plot was his own unborn son. Todd, Lynn, Norm Dale, they all went to prison. Todd's on death row. Todd Garton spent a lifetime creating stories, but the story of his life is nothing to be admired. When Michael meets Dalia, he thinks it's meant to be.
We just seemed like we connected perfect.
There's just one problem. She wants him dead.
Are you sure you want to kill this dude?
I'm positive, like 5,000% sure.
Who would ever see that coming? I didn't even get kill him softly, make him go away painlessly.
She is determined, but there's a twist in the plot.
This is Sergeant Frank Ramsey. It's very urgent when you come home. It involves your husband. There's been an incident.
He had it so bad that Love was blind, deaf, and dumb.
My name is Steve Schirripa. I grew up in a pretty rough neighborhood in Brooklyn, New York. I've seen good people turn bad and bad people turn worse. Some took contracts to carry out a hit. Some were victims of a hit. To hitmen, life and death is just part of the business. It's nothing personal.
It's a beautiful August morning in South Florida. And 26-year-old Dalia Dippolito is starting it at the gym. That's when she gets the phone call every wife fears.
This is Sergeant Frank Ramsey, Boynton Beach Police Department. We're at your residence, ma'am. It's very urgent when you come home. It involves your husband. There's been an incident.
At the condo Dalia shares with husband Michael, the grim task of securing a homicide scene is nearly complete. Boynton Beach cops are well trained in crime scene procedures. They'll need their skills today because this one is a fake. There's no body, just a trap for a homicidal newlywed wife.
This is a story about a terrible thing that almost happened to a guy who should have seen it coming. It's about a temptress who sets up the man who loves her, kind of like that old Bible story, Samson and Delilah. Mike thinks he's in a different movie, one of those hooker with a heart of gold jobs. Pretty Woman, maybe. But Delilah, I mean Dalia, make no mistake. She's a vixen straight out of the Old Testament. October 2008, the year before that fateful August. Michael Dippolito isn't looking for trouble, but he does want to get naughty. Mike's wife Maria's out of town. He has needs and a telephone. Bad combo.
He called an escort to his office in Boca, and the woman that showed up was Dalia.
Samson, meet Delilah. How did Mike feel that ill-starred day?
I'd like to tell you I met Dalia at church, but I'd be lying to you. Me and Dalia, we got along really well right from the beginning. At the time, I thought my first marriage wasn't really working out. I wasn't happy, and I meet Dalia, and everything's new and exciting. And the reality, you know, looking back on it, I made a very bad choice. You know, I had a really good first wife.
When Maria got back from traveling, she told me that Michael did pretty quickly ask for a divorce. Maria and Michael Dippolito were divorced in January of 2009, and 5 days later, Dalia and Michael Dippolito were married.
When I first met Dalia and we got married that fast, we just seemed like we connected perfect. When I was with Dalia, I felt very alive. We'd have sex like 5 times a day, every day. It was exciting all the time.
Dalia must have some mind-blowing talents, but Michael believes it's way more than that. It's a beautiful connection that's meant to be. What he doesn't know is that Dalia's no stranger to such fateful connections, and she's turned a profit on every one.
She certainly seemed to be linked to gentlemen that had money. She liked the lifestyle. She liked the fancy clothes. She liked the fancy jewelry.
What she likes most is keeping everything when the romance is over. For a girl who likes costly trinkets, Dalia came to the right place. Boynton Beach is right next door to Palm Beach. When old money flies south for the winter, it often lands right here. The price of admission to those gated mansions is usually a trust fund. What Dalia's got is a hot body. That works too, if like her, you're willing to rent it out to paying customers.
She'd get her hair done every week, fake eyelashes, fake nails, the fake boobs. You know, there's a lot of maintenance involved. She spent time fixing herself up to look good.
Florida is a really transient place, and a lot of people come to Florida to escape their lives, whether they are criminals or whether they're retirees.
If you think about it, criminals and retirees are both after easy lifestyles. The difference is who earned the money. Dalia came from New York. For Mike, Florida is a refuge from some mistakes he made back in Philly.
I originally came to Florida to stay out of trouble. And lo and behold, you know, I've done quite the opposite of that, I hate to say.
Before we get too far, you ought to know that hiring Dalia for a quickie is not Mike's first ethical lapse. Before their fateful encounter, he'd made a career of scamming people out of their nest eggs. He'd lure them into surefire investments and keep the money.
We had a business that didn't exist. We were raising funds, foreign currency options that we didn't trade.
He took the money that they were supposedly investing and he spent it on whatever he wanted. So then he was busted and he did go to prison.
He does plead guilty, accepts responsibility for the charges, and he spends 2 years in prison. And then he's put on probation for, I think it's 28 years, so he's gonna be on probation till the year of 2032.
Mike Dippolito's friends say he comes out of prison a changed man, determined to stay on the up and up. Well, score 1 for Florida's Corrections Department. Mike starts a new life, full of promise. His biggest commitment is to pay back the people he ripped off. We'll get to that later.
Right now, let's stay on the romance. Mike and Dalia seem made for each other.
My main thing is tanning in the gym.
There was a routine that Dalia described for her and Michael's daily lives together. That routine consisted of waking up pretty early in the morning. She said she would give him steroid injections. Then they would both go to the gym. Michael Dippolito had liposuction, I believe, on his love handles.
I have a bad habit. I focus a lot on the external things. You know, wow, palm trees, it's exciting. Everybody has a nice car. And I'm a shopaholic. I love to shop.
So, Mike and Dalia share the same values. They're shallow, but they are values. For Dalia, becoming Mrs. Dippolito is a dream come true. Before, she only got trinkets for her favors. You know, jewelry, a car. Now she has a whole condo.
Trouble is, it isn't really hers. She can't sell it and move on, and anyway, she's just married to the owner. It won't be her property unless something drastic happens. But these days, anything is possible.
All of this was happening in less than 3 months. Every day something was moving and moving, and it was exciting. Sure, I didn't have time to breathe. Everything was working out perfect. I bought the house. We got married. We got a new dog. I would say to Dalia, I said, some people don't ever get to this spot. I said, we're young and we're already there.
As far as Mike can see, Dalia's a little miracle who's upended his life in every possible way. All of them good.
She just seemed like she had her act together. She was telling me that she was, selling real estate, and I believed it. Why would I not?
She did get a real estate license, I believe, and she was working for a real estate company. Perhaps briefly, but long enough to sell Michael Dippolito his condo.
How she sells Mike the idea that she's suddenly become a successful real estate agent is a head-scratcher, but it's something he wants to believe.
She was telling me she had a couple closings from houses coming, and they just never materialized.
The commissions never materialized because Dalia isn't selling real estate. She's still in the escort business. Dalia and Mike are both giddy with the excitement of getting what they always wanted. Mike's got Dalia, and Dalia's finally got something to show for all of her hard work besides chump change and rug burns. Thing is, Mike hasn't figured out that he's the one thing in this pretty picture Dalia could live without. Okay, so let me set the scene. Wednesday, August 5th, 2009, Boynton Beach, Florida. At about 6:30 in the morning, Mike Dippolito is rudely awakened. The cops tell him his wife planned to have him killed today. Oh, it's gonna get wild. Mike needs to come downtown pronto. So how did we get here? From guy meets girl to newlywed wife tries to have husband whacked. Oh, it's easy to say Mike should have seen it coming, but who would? To any normal person, it's just too damn weird. Even so, it's not like there haven't been red flags. For starters, Dalia likes money and travel.
She absolutely loved that fast-paced lifestyle. It's what she wanted. And when she got a taste of that, she wanted more.
Trouble is, Mike owes every penny he has to the people he ripped off.
He'd served his prison time. The only condition he had left was to pay off the $191,000 in restitution to the victims.
And Mike, well, he can't go anywhere.
My probation keeps me in Palm Beach County. Dalia pressed me a little about the probation. Look, you have to get off, because she wanted to travel.
The idea of so much cash being returned to its rightful owners is more than Dalia can stand. She figures out a way to put it in her pocket. But to pull it off, she's gonna have to scam her own husband. Dalia did tell Mike that she'll do anything to get that restitution monkey off his back. She says she'll kick in nearly $100,000 of her own money to make that happen. Mike's problem is he believes her.
I was blinded by love, and I just never saw any of that coming. It seemed like me and Dalia were on the same page with everything, and we were moving in the same direction.
But the direction Dalia's moving in is towards Mike's money. And now she gets a big chance. Mike's lawyer tells him not 1 cent of his restitution payments can come from any questionable source. Mike's accounts are still tainted. So Dalia suggests the money come from her account, which Mike believes is full of squeaky clean real estate commissions.
Dalia said, look, I'll put up half, and you put up the other half, and then we'll be done with this, and we can do all these things we want to do. I had been on probation a long time. I was more excited to get off probation than I was in anything else. I was going to get my life back.
The plan is for Mike to give Dalia $100 grand in cash. She puts it in her account and adds 91 grand of her own. Does Dalia have that kind of money?
I never really looked at Dalia's money, ever. I wasn't concerned with that.
Well, he should have been. Dalia's never sold a thing except his condo and her body.
So Michael starts to give her money. He writes her checks, he gives her some cash. Over a period of about 2 or 3 weeks, he gives her the $100,000, thinking, this is my wife. She loves me, she wants to help me, we're in this together.
I gave Dalia my half, and her half just never seemed to show up. And once that happened, I guess you could say the games began.
She takes his money and she just spends it how she wants.
We go shopping sometimes, and once in a while, she'd say, hey, let me pay for that. The funny thing is, I was paying for it. It was my money, but I would never know that, right?
Dalia's scheme bears an uncanny resemblance to a well-known street scam. But she's got a big problem. She's married to the victim. What's worse, she doesn't even like him. What's the cure for the 7-week itch? What if Michael was back behind bars?
My impression was that she thought he'd be a perfect source of wealth, Michael Dippolito, as long as he wasn't there. And she could just enjoy the house and the cars and everything with him being in jail.
The cops get a series of anonymous tips saying Mike is a big-time coke dealer. Check his car. You'll see.
They're looking, they find a cigarette pack with cocaine in it. I said, why would I put that under my tire? You know, if that was mine, I would assume it'd be in my pocket. Cop pulled me aside and they're talking. He says, look, I'm gonna let you go. And I'm like, I had no idea why this guy let me go. All he had to do was arrest me and I was in a lot of trouble. Even if he arrested me and let me go, I was in trouble.
Here's the bit that gets me. Lawmen love finding parolees breaking the law. Boom, back to prison. No trial, no hassle. But even the cops think, coke, smoke, this is a setup. They tell Mike to watch his back and let him go. You don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to make some elementary deductions here. Let's start with who's got the keys to my car?
I was at the courthouse and I ran into the arresting officer and they said to me, hey, you know, I just wanted to let you know the reason we let you go that day, because we knew it was your wife. And I looked at him, I said, how'd you know it was my wife? He says, she was more irritated that she had to stand there and wait than she was upset for you.
Then there were several calls to his probation officer, several anonymous calls made that he's dealing drugs out of his house, that he's selling steroids, that he's selling ecstasy, and the probation officer would show up unannounced and do searches of Mike Dippolito's house. During that period of time, what she's doing is she's trying to have him arrested. She's trying to set him up. She's trying to get his probation officer to violate his probation so he'll go back to prison.
How do we know all these details? Dalia's a text addict. Check out this little gem.
She definitely was enlisting her former boyfriends to try and help her get rid of Michael.
Dalia's many boyfriends seem only too glad to help. And why not? I mean, she's hot, and she makes it clear she's bored with Mike and very much available.
She maintains contact with a lot of her ex-lovers and uses them for whatever she needs.
Her bestest texter, with benefits, is a rich guy in California named Stanley.
She uses him, actually, to assist her in trying to get Mike Dippolito arrested, trying to have him put in jail, planning drugs on him, conspiring to take the house from him, and ultimately she tells Mike Stanley that she wants to be with him, capitalizing on the fact that he's a wealthy man.
Stanley is not only rich, he's a buttyless Lothario who could make any girl squirm with textual desire. Dalia, I have always wanted you. You are my unicorn. What the hell does that even mean?
Stanley is happy to be Dalia's love slave, but he's on the wrong coast. He can work the phones, though. So, Mike gets a phone call, supposedly from a lawyer friend of Dalia's, who convinces Mike to sign his paid-for condo over to her. His hook? You need to protect yourself, Mike. Dalia could be your shelter.
During one phone call, do you have any assets? Do you have anything that's in your name? Because I'm concerned that if you do, that since you owe this restitution, they can take your assets. And he says, well, I do actually happen to own a house. He says, well, you need to get the house out of your name and put it in your wife's name. He and Dalia go the next morning, and he signs the house over. She gets the deed to the house. The title's totally in her name. She gets Mike Stanley to call the Department of the Treasury, to call the IRS, to call the Department of Corrections, trying to get Mike Dippolito in trouble with the authorities and arrested and back in jail so that he and Dalia can be together.
While all this is going on, it seems from Dalia's texts that she's still in the escort business. Love is blind, clueless, call it what you want. Mike doesn't even notice.
Michael Dippolito said that his friends and family suspected his wife of causing some of this trouble for him, but he didn't listen to them.
Dalia, from what I found out, was texting numerous old boyfriends So she must have literally been walking out of the room and turning the corner and texting away. I never saw it.
You could fault Dalia for a thing or two, like being greedy, manipulative, and evil, but you can't call her vague.
Despite making her wishes clear, Dalia's efforts to get her husband back behind bars are going nowhere. And that puts her in a sticky situation. She's burnt through Mike's restitution money. Now, in my experience, people tend to get bent out of shape when large sums of money go missing.
I promised this money to probation. Well, they wanted it. And now I don't have an excuse for where it went. I had confronted her a couple times. She would get very upset. It's not me. What are you talking about? You know I'm coming up with the money. You know, I'm trying to give my wife credit.
Oh, Dalia has her ways to calm Michael down. And she gives him no time to think.
Before Mike, the guy she leeched off didn't mind. But Mike needs that $100 grand now
to get his ass off probation.
After 2.5 weeks of this, you know, it just got to the point where I knew, you know, she was lying. And, you know, our sex life's still good. We're still getting along. We're still doing the things we do. But, you know, there's this shadow over me of, you know, okay, where's this money? Because now everybody's asking me, Mike, where's this money supposed to be here?
So, Dalia's cornered. Mike's gonna figure it out soon, and it will be ugly, unless something takes him out of the picture. It's hard to believe, but it seems that Dalia's heart is made of ice. Murder for her is an easy way out of an awkward situation. Oh, and speaking of ice.
She brought him tea that was laced with antifreeze.
Yeah, awesome.
I'll see you later.
Okay. All right. Have fun.
I grab the tea and I take a sip. I couldn't get it out of my mouth fast enough to spit it out. It tasted like gasoline. In my mind, I'm just thinking, oh, they didn't stir my tea. I didn't think anything of it.
So Michael Dippolito misses every possible tip-off. He is alive today through no fault of his own. After the poison tea goes down the drain, Dalia realized she needs professional help. Therapy? Nah. This is a show about hitmen, remember?
I mean, what do you think she's going to do? It's 5 minutes from Dalia Dippolito's gym to the condo where she believes her husband's been murdered. She thinks she's driving down Easy Street. At 26, she's a rich widow. All she needs to do now is fake bereavement as well as she faked being a happy newlywed.
There are better solutions to Dalia's dilemma than murder, but none of them seem to cross her mind. If you're in the sex trade, I guess immediate release is what you're usually after.
But hiring a hitman is the long-term solution. And she's got an immediate problem. What do?
She produces a check for $191,000 so that Mike Dippolito can be off probation.
There's no money to back it up. But Mike doesn't know that.
This gets a little complicated, so pay attention. They bring the $191,000 check to Mike's lawyer. But now Dalia demands that he pony up the extra 91 grand, not her. Mike's in a bind. He gets the cash and gives it to Dalia. She hands over the check. Is there time for one last flim-flam? Why, yes, there is. The old switcheroo.
Mike Dippolito walks into his lawyer's office and hands him the check, thinking he's now off probation. He didn't look at it, thinks it's the same check.
The lawyer opens the envelope. He finds a check for $191, not $191,000. Now Mike's really confused. He's no stranger to con games, but could his own wife be pulling a fast one? So now Dalia's really in a bind. What could she come up with? How about, I'm not thinking clearly, Mike, 'cause I'm pregnant with your baby. I know what you're thinking. Oh, no, she didn't. Oh, yes, she did.
Now I think I have a child coming with her, and so, you know, it's not only my new wife, it's my new pregnant wife. We're sitting there every night. She's reading baby books. I mean, this girl's nuts. We almost painted my extra bedroom with a baby mural. Thank God I didn't do that.
At the time, Mike thinks life's great with Dalia, but something odd is going on. Could somebody be out to get him? He's nervous and sets up security cameras.
Other than the issue where, you know, the missing money and the probation, he said he thought he had the perfect marriage. They got along great, they went everywhere together. He said they had a tremendous sex life, and he was very happy other than that one particular issue.
The girl's sleeping in bed next to me every night. Her mother's over the house every other night. I'm at her mom's house every other day. You know, I'm doing a lot of nice things with her family. I just, you know, I couldn't imagine. I guess let's just say this, if I was gonna do what she did, I wouldn't bring her around my family or people if I was just planned on robbing and trying to kill someone. I don't see it. So that fogged my judgment a little as well.
Now, Dalia married Mike in February 2009. By April, she's working on getting Mike whacked. I think Black Widow spiders have longer honeymoons.
Dalia realizes that killing Mike will be a lot easier if she outsources the job. So she decides the perfect candidate is her longtime lover, Mohammed Shahada. Mohammed gives her some pushback. Unlike Dalia, he knows the difference between a favor and homicide.
They're having a heated conversation, and she's saying about how she wants to have her husband killed. And there's some gang members from Riviera Beach that are close and can hear their conversation. So they step in and say, we'll do it. She takes them and drives them by the house that she lives in with Mike Dippolito. They come back and they tell Mohammed, you know, she's crazy, we're not gonna do it. There's surveillance cameras outside of the front of the house.
When the gangbang is back out, Dalia turns up the heat on Mohammed. If he won't help her, she'll find someone else or do it herself with his gun.
For Mohammed, the bloom is definitely off the Dalia rose. Illicit nookie he was up for. First-degree murder, not so much. Florida fries people for that. So what does he do? He calls the cops.
Mohammed tells Detective Alex Marino of the Boynton Beach PD about Dalia's crazy scheme. Detective Marino tells Mohammed he'll need his help to shut her down. Mohammed agrees to play along.
I'm glad the guy obviously did what he did and turned Dalia into the police. He saved my life. In all fairness, you know, he spent a lot of my money with her, and he's banging my wife, so I'd have to say we're kind of even.
Detective Moreno knows he's got to catch Dalia red-handed or he can't charge her. Mohammed's story, just hearsay. So he bugs Mohammed's car and then gets him to set up a rendezvous.
Dalia Dippolito showed up at the gas station driving her car. The informant was at the gas station already waiting for her. She exits her vehicle, goes into the informant's car that was set up with the video and audio, and they immediately began the conversation, and without any hesitation, she begins talking about how she wanted her husband killed.
Mohammed is an actor, and he sticks to the script. I won't do it myself, Dalia, but I do know a guy. Dalia hands over pictures of Mike in their condo. The police get it all on tape. One tape.
Right, but right now I'm not seeing him. I'm not anything. Wipe my hands off this pictures. Really? You're gonna give him something with my fingerprints all over?
I'm gonna show it to him. He's not gonna keep it.
The next scene the cops want is the money shot. Dalia hiring a hitman. Officer Witty John looks like a cop, but Dalia doesn't pick up on it. Now, here's a little tip for you. Policemen and bad guys look alike, but cops have better teeth.
They told me they had this lady who was trying to find someone to kill her husband. So they wanted me to pose as the hitman and try to make contact with her and set up a meeting so we can talk about, you know, the details of killing her husband.
Officer Woody Jean, he was in the undercover unit, so we decided that he would be the best guy to play the role as a hitman. Woody Jean had been working undercover for a while, so he was actually very experienced.
Dalia Dippolito meets Officer Witty Jean in his guise of killer for hire.
We had our undercover units set up the cameras inside the car, which would have been Woody Jean's car, and we set up audio where we can actually listen as it's happening live.
which is why we could hear exactly what Dalia said when she thought she was hiring a hitman.
I told her, well, okay, so how do you want it done? Where do you want it done? She was definitely interested in telling me, this is his schedule, you know, on Wednesday, that's when I want it done if it's possible. I said, well, Wednesday is good, we could.
Wednesday's 2 days away. What you're seeing is a desperate woman who fears her scheming ways are about to be revealed.
At the house, like how soon could you do it?
I could do it Wednesday morning.
Her interaction with the hitman was very much a business transaction. Here's what I want to happen, here's his schedule, here's pictures, here's the money, like, let's get this done. She never expressed very much emotion about having her husband killed.
It was like she was going to make a nail appointment. She was gonna have her husband murdered, someone she supposedly loved, someone she's married to, and she could have cared less.
But even when hiring a hitman, Dalia's a savvy shopper. In fact, she's got an ingenious scheme to get Mike whacked for free.
He's going into the bank on Wednesday and he's pulling up money, like I know what bank he's going to.
What bank is it going?
Dalia hatches a plan for Mike to pay for his own hit. He's gonna get 10 grand from the bank in a couple of days, she tells Whitty. Hit him on the street, take the money, we're even. Bad plan, says Whitty. Too many witnesses. Too hard to fake is what he's really thinking. What Whitty really needs is for Dalia to offer him money. That's the crime.
Okay, when it's all done, I was gonna get $3,000 from you today.
Then Whitty Jean convinces Dalia that the way to do the hit is at the condo, the old robbery gone bad ploy.
Because I was looking in newspapers, there's been a lot of burglaries in this area.
You also want to establish different aspects of a crime. You know, you definitely want to show intent. You actually want to gather evidence.
Criminal intent? This is what it sounds like.
I'm determined already. I'm positive, like 5,000% sure.
I still just say to myself, you know, why didn't she just hire a lawyer and divorce me? I mean, what would I do? Cry? Say no? You know, she would have still wound up, you know, making out like a bandit.
Dalia thinks that hitman is her ticket to life as a prosperous Boynton Beach widow. All of her needs will be taken care of. Officer Whitty Jean also has plans to get Dalia what she needs. But he thinks shackles will be a good start.
You try to be as relaxed and cool as possible without losing your edge. Basically, you don't want to be in there, relaxed, so cool to the point where you become complacent, then, you know, you're gonna die.
Dalia's bought Whitty Jean's act. She offers him $3,000. That's pretty cheap for a hitman. But all Officer John needs on tape is for her to make any offer of money for murder.
Her intent was that I'm gonna pay $1,200 to get him killed. If he asked for $3,000, okay, I'm willing to pay $3,000.
Meanwhile, lead investigator Alex Marino is blocking out the sting for the day of the hit. He wants Dalia on camera after she thinks Mike's been killed. A trial, like a movie, is a show. He's preparing for it and wants every scene just right.
What do you need to dress your set? Cop cars, crime tape, you know, all that CSI stuff.
We're gonna make it believe like it was a robbery or a burglary that went wrong. Put some fingerprint dust in front of the house by the front door. Just make it look like somebody just got killed inside the house.
The hit is set for Wednesday morning. Dalia's job is to make herself scarce.
I give her the instructions to leave her house by 6 o'clock in the morning.
So this is Dalia's moment of truth. She could call it off, stay home, tell the hitman never mind. She might have to do some fast talking, but she's good at that. She doesn't do it. She kisses Mike goodbye like it's any other day. She heads to the gym, figuring when she sees him next, it'll be at the morgue.
Dalia gets up, says, I'm gonna go to the gym today, and I'm like, okay. She just won't stop talking.
When she leaves the house early in the morning, she takes all her jewelry to the gym. I mean, who does that?
She took, you know, some of her prized possession with her because she knew that I was gonna be stealing things from the house. She didn't want one of the things stolen to be hers.
Wednesday morning, everybody shows up early in the morning, and people get assigned to different locations where they're going to be conducting surveillance. We set detectives at the house giving us information when she leaves and when she goes to the gym.
With Dalia gone, the cops go to work. They've got to get it done fast. First thing, break the news to the newlywed that the woman of his dreams wants him 6 feet under.
Sergeant Sheridan, Paul Sheridan, knocked on the door, and I was also standing there, and we made contact with Mr. Michael Dippolito for the first time. And we tell him that, hey, we're conducting an investigation where your wife is trying to get you killed, and that's why we're here, and we need to get you out of the house as soon as possible. He was shaking, nervous, and shocked. He didn't know what to think.
You know, it hit me. I'm like, okay, everything that happened, you know, the drugs, everything crazy that's been happening, the money missing, I just knew it was her. I kind of knew it was her, but I didn't want to. My worst day in the world was that it was my wife. And lo and behold, here's the worst day in the world right now.
When Mike's safely downtown, Sergeant Ramsey calls the wannabe widow.
This is Sergeant Frank Ramsey, Boynton Beach Police Department. We're at your residence, ma'am. It's very urgent when you come home. It involves your husband. There's been an incident.
Upon her arrival, she sees all this police action going on and the yellow tape and everything else. So she pretty much has an idea thinking that her husband had been killed.
What you're about to see is the first and only take of Dalia's career-making performance.
Listen, we had a report of a disturbance at your house, and there were shots fired. Is your husband Michael? Okay, I'm sorry to tell you, man, he's been killed. He's been killed, Mary. Listen, try to calm down. Right now, we need to get you to the police station. I can't let you in, man. We have to do our job. You want to find his killer, okay? We need you to calm down.
You gotta give Dalia credit. She's a master at faking emotion. She's put a lot of thought into the script for today, and she plays her part beautifully. But things are about to go off script. Dalia's gonna have to try some improv, and the show just keeps getting better. Dalia Dippolito has just been told that her husband Michael has been murdered. Everybody in this scene is acting. She's not sad nor surprised. And the cops, oh, they faked the whole scene. What Dalia doesn't know is that her husband Michael is alive and cooling his heels down at the Boynton Beach PD.
The police told me, we're gonna sit in this room, you're gonna be able to watch us confront her. So we sat down there and we waited for him to bring Dalia in.
Now, I know a thing or two about acting, and so do cops, especially when it comes to things like, I'm shocked by this terrible thing that I had nothing to do with.
I've informed people in reference to their loved ones dying, and I've always got a different reaction than what Dalia Dippolito did. She immediately, before he can even finish the sentence, she starts crying.
Oh, and that isn't her only miscue.
Right after she gets told about it, she asked about the dogs, which just didn't make any sense. I mean, through my experience, I've never had that. She wanted to see the body. She wanted to make sure that he was dead. And then she jumps into, how are the dogs?
Well, we need to get your husband's killer, ma'am.
For those of you worrying, the dog is fine. What's not fine is Dalia's script. She doesn't know it, but it's off the rails. It's actually a cop show now. And they need one more scene. Dalia lies through her teeth. They could have set up a better camera angle, but it did get the shot.
We did the initial interview with her and made her believe she was actually helping us in the investigation.
Listen, is there anybody that you know that you think would want to kill your husband?
My husband's on probation.
Dalia points the finger at some of the people from Mike's shady past. When Sergeant Paul Sheridan's heard enough, he pulls the plug.
The game's over with. okay? There's no more games with you and I. Now we're going to get down to serious business. I want to know if you know this guy. Come here. Bring this guy in here.
Now is when Dalia's mouth gets a little dry, which is always bad news in her line of work.
When the detectives put handcuffs on me, handcuffed me behind my back. The guys was, we've caught the guy who did it. He's a prisoner.
You know who this guy is?
No.
You've never seen him before?
I've never seen him before, ever.
And then she looked up at me and she said, nope, I've never seen him before. No emotion, she just looked at me, she's like, nope, I don't know him.
So another lie, you know, which we had her on video meeting the actual undercover agent days before.
Get him out of here.
With that scene, the cops have their movie in the can. All that's left is what we call the denouement, the wrap-up. It's up to Sergeant Sheridan to give Dalia the bad news.
You're going to jail today for solicitation of murder. You're under arrest. That's an undercover police officer. We filmed everything that you did, recorded everything that you did. You're going to jail for solicitation of first-degree murder of your husband.
I didn't do anything.
Did you hear what I just told you?
I couldn't believe it was happening, but yet I completely believed it was happening.
Tell me you didn't do anything?
I didn't do anything.
I want you to quit your acting and get this over with.
You know what?
Still refusing to admit the truth, our dangerous Dalia is about to find out this is a completely different production than the $3 drama she thought she paid for.
You sound like a fool right now denying this, because, like my partner just said, everything's on tape.
She was just like telling us, you guys have been so nice to me, you know, I don't understand, you know, I would never do something like that.
I don't want to give you guys a hard time, like you guys have been really nice to me, and I know you didn't have to take special considerations and things like that, and I appreciate it.
She was very good at manipulating men. Even during our interview, when I talked to her, she even tried to, you know, manipulate us. What I decided was to let her listen to a portion of the actual meeting of her and the undercover agent to let her know this is really serious.
Already. I'm positive, like 5,000% sure. Like,
I'm sitting there saying to myself, I'm like, wow, like I didn't even kill him softly, make him go away painlessly. Like I got like, you know, make sure you kill. It was like kill him, yeah, with a gun. And she's like, yeah, okay. I thought I was always very nice to her, you know. That's what really surprised me.
I also showed her some photos of when she met the undercover agent, and we have all this evidence. Be honest and tell the truth.
Dalia doesn't fess up.
We go ahead and arrest her for solicitation of first-degree murder.
Please.
Stand up.
Stand up, please.
Right after that, then we decided to tell her the truth, how her husband wasn't dead. And at one point, we actually bring her husband in front of the interview room and let her see that he was alive.
Oh my God.
He's alive.
Come here, please. Come here. Mike, come here. Come here, please. Come here.
Can't fix it.
Why not? I'm sorry. I heard you.
When I saw Dalia do the fake crying and the tears and oh my God, you know, I had been watching her lie to me for 3-4 months. If I caught her with her hand in a cookie jar, she would swear to me my hand was not in the cookie jar and not give up. Dalia called me from jail. Everybody wants to know why I took the call. I had to take the call. I just wanted to hear what she was going to say.
I can't help you. Don't you understand what just happened?
What they're saying is not true.
How is that possible?
Like, I'm sitting here. It's not true. It's not possible. You wouldn't even give me 2 minutes to talk to you, but it's not possible. What they are saying is not true. How can you believe that?
I heard your voice.
How can you believe it?
So she's, you know, I didn't do this. How come you're not hiring me a lawyer? And I just couldn't believe that she kept coming and coming. I'm like, look, I said, you're caught. I didn't even get involved and you tried to kill me. I'm more like, you stole my money, you stole my house. I'm like, she's like, help me, help me. And I said, I'll help you. I said, sign my house back over to me and I'll help you.
You know what I'll do? You know what I'll do for you? Seriously?
What?
You sign my house back over to me. I'll help you, Mom. Give me my house back. That's it.
That's it, what?
I'll help you. So I don't have to go through the legal bullshit I have to go through already.
What does that mean?
It means sign my property back to me that you stole, basically.
That's what you're thinking, and I didn't steal anything.
All right, so listen. I'll have the papers sent over to you somehow. You'll sign them over to me, and then I will help your mother. Okay?
I'm not signing anything.
And I knew what she'd say. Of course she says, oh, I'm not doing that. And I just chuckled. I said, I knew you were going to say that.
This is someone who basically thinks that nothing's going to ever happen to her. She's not really going to be arrested. She's not going to be convicted of this. She'll get out of this like she always does.
I didn't do anything, and I didn't plot anything.
One interesting piece of evidence that we found during the course of the investigation, we did a forensic exam of her computer. And the day that she was to meet with Woody Jean, the hitman, while she's waiting for him, she's at home and she's on her computer. And she does a search, a Google search. And she types in funeral homes in Boynton Beach, which is where she lived. She clicked into websites such as how to have a meaningful memorial service. So clearly the theory from the prosecution was that, you know, she's sitting there right before she's gonna meet with the hitman, she's plotting her husband's funeral service and she's trying to figure out how she's gonna look like the grieving widow.
So you remember how in that old Bible story, Delilah robbed Samson of his power by setting him up for a haircut? Maybe it's the handcuffs that sapped Dalia's power. When Michael Dippolito faces the woman who tried to end his life, it's hard to see what the attraction was.
When I saw Dalia in court, I felt bad for her. From what I was told, Dalia thought this was all going to go away and she was going to move on with her life. And I don't think she understood, you know, what really is happening.
You've seen a greedy, manipulative, evil woman who won't stop at anything.
There's no denying the truth. She did it, and you know it.
Before he sentences Dalia, the judge tells her what he thinks of what she did.
It was pure evil. You were taking advantage of a guy that was gullible, that was in love with you.
Dalia Dippolito gets 20 years. On this day, Michael gets the last word.
I wish we were never here, and as far as the sentence, I'm 5,000% happy with it. That's all for now. If I were talking to Dalia now, I guess I'd say to her, you know, was it worth it? You know, this is a person I would lay in bed and tell her all the things I did wrong to go to prison and be on probation and how I definitely would never do it again. And, you know, obviously she didn't hear a word I said.
Michael didn't see the entire big picture. He didn't see really what was going on because he was so blinded by love. He had it so bad that love was blind, deaf, and dumb.
You know, the funny part of all this, if you really look at it, she's actually she had me 5 ways to Sunday 10 different times, but she just didn't do it. You know, she couldn't poison me right, she couldn't plant drugs on me right, she couldn't, you know, she had me 5 different ways and just kept fumbling the ball.
So what's the lesson here? Well, here's one thing to ponder. Mike Dippolito had a wife who loved him. He dumped her for a greedy, conniving, homicidal floozy. No matter how small your brain is, it's still bigger than, you know, other body parts. Not using the brain God gave you can be a fatal mistake.